This happened about a year ago. From 2013 to 2015, I worked night shift security at an RV resort. I was on my way to work one night when my front driver's side tire blew out on a long, narrow dirt road. It was around 10:30 p.m., so it was pretty dark. I live in a very secluded area in upstate Florida, and this road was not near any neighborhoods and had only a few street lights. My shift started at 11, so I called the manager and told her that I might be a little late because I had to change the tire. After I got that squared away, I pulled out my car jack and started to position it underneath my Ranger. I was about to start cranking away when I saw the dim glow of some golf cart headlights approaching me from down the street in the direction I had just come from. I was thinking that it was probably a local, wondering what was going on and maybe they would be nice enough to give me a hand. The golf cart stopped behind my truck. I stood up from where I was crouching and said, "Hey there, one of my tires just blew out. You wouldn't mind giving me a hand, would you? I'm kinda running late for work." The person in the golf cart did not respond, and then I heard them getting out of the golf cart. The person came within the headlights of their own golf cart. The light was dim, so it was kind of hard to see, but he looked like a middle-aged man with no shirt on, so I could clearly see his beer gut. He also had hairy legs, and I could see that something was dangling under his massive stomach. Turns out, he was completely naked. That's something I could have lived my entire life without seeing. The man seemed to be holding something in his hands. I only caught a quick look at the object. All dick jokes aside, the thing that this guy was holding looked like a machete. The man didn't say a word as he started to slowly walk towards me. I quickly jumped back in my truck, started it up, and noped the fuck out of there. I didn't have time to grab my car jack, so I just left it behind. My truck was lopsided from the deflated tire, and it awkwardly accelerated forward. I could see my interior mirror that the headlights of the golf cart were close behind me. Despite my truck having a flat tire, it was still going a decent speed, and so was the golf cart that was tailing me. So in a split-second decision, I slammed the brakes of my Ranger, and not even a second later I heard and felt the golf cart smash into my rear end. I rolled down my window and shouted, "Fuck you, creep!" and sped off. I managed to get to work on time. Fucked up my rim pretty bad though. I explained everything to the manager, and the cops were called. They searched the road but found no signs of the guy or his golf cart. But they did find my car jack, which was returned to me. Other than a few minor dents, the back of my truck didn't look bad at all. I'm sure that golf cart had it 10 times worse. He had to be going full speed when he crashed into me, and I'm surprised he was able to drive it away after that. I've come to the conclusion that this weirdo was on a serious meth high, because that area has that kind of reputation. I no longer own that truck or work at that site anymore. So, creepy bare-ass overweight machete-wielding psychopath, for the love of God, put on some fucking pants.
When I was 18, I worked at a local coffee shop in my hometown, and I often worked there picking up shifts and closing 6 nights a week. I had lots of regulars and lots of randoms, but other than maybe a few awkward orders, I never really had a problem with the customer being inappropriate or out of hand. This night was already really stressful for me because it was Halloween, and I was a little bummed to be closing when my friends were out and about. I had some plans to go with friends to a house that my friends had rented right down the street after work, with some pastries and Red Bull, so I didn't really mind too much. It was about 9:45, and I was already ready to close right at 10. It had been dead since about 8, and all I had to do was a final register count. Everything was clean, and I was reading a book to pass time, trying not to watch the clock. Our counter, by the way, is like a bar counter. Long, with the register near the door at the closed end, and with one far end open for us to go in and out of, right near the door to our back room. A man walked in the front door, who looked to be about his mid-20s. He was black and had on a big hoodie, and was wearing sweatpants that sagged down, so I could see the waistbands of 2 different pairs of gym shorts underneath. I'm a young white female, but I have no fear of people and I'm not racist, so I didn't bat an eyelash when he walked in with one hand in his hoodie pocket and the other in the pocket of one of the pairs of gym shorts. Men of all races wear clothes like that and carry themselves that way, at least where I live, so with no concern, I greeted him and asked him how he was and what he was thinking of ordering. He took his time to respond, but wasn't looking at the menu or at our chalkboard with seasonal drink offers. He was looking at the front door. He took about a minute, then turned to me and asked my name. I often had both male and female customers ask this, so I just told him, and then asked again when he was looking to order. He began to ask me more questions about me and my job. He asked if I liked it. I responded, thinking maybe he wanted a job application, and gave him a very short version of how I felt. It was almost 9:50 at this time, and I kept checking my phone, thinking that I just wanted to make his drink so I could clean up again and meet my friends. He nodded, saying he thought I liked my job, which I thought was strange, but again, I didn't think about it. I agreed again. He then started to ask about the shifts I worked. I figured he had sympathy that it was Halloween, and I gave him a vague answer. He then asked why I didn't work on Thursdays. My heart jumped. I didn't see that one coming from a mile away. I struggled to respond, and he continued, and asked if Sunday mornings were better than Wednesday nights. At this point, I broke into nervous laughter and smiles, asking him if he was looking to work for the coffee shop, and that we needed the help. He'd stopped smiling at this point, and his hand in the hoodie pocket made an abrupt move to the very inside pair of gym shorts, basically so that he would be grabbing himself. He didn't quite reach in all the way, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I asked him to order or leave, as the end of our business day was almost there, and that I needed to clean and lock up. At this point, I grabbed my cell phone and kept it in my hand, thinking, how can I dial 911 and not have him begin to molest himself in front of me, or whatever he planned on doing? He began to sort of lean on the counter and ask me questions. He asked me where I lived, did I have a boyfriend, what were my plans for that night. I was trying hard not to cry, and tried my best to lie through more vague answers, hoping he would just go away if I didn't freak out. He began to move away from the register at this point, still leaning on the counter, hands in his pants, towards the open end of the bar. I began to back far towards the front door as possible, but that end had no opening, and was so high. I couldn't jump it without considerable effort, and climbing over an espresso machine. The only other exit I could think of was our narrow drive-through window. Clutching my phone, I asked him what he wanted. For some reason, he stopped. He stood up and looked toward the front door, then turned to look at the clock behind him. I took the chance to start running a text message to my friend, saying, if I'm not at your place in 10 minutes, call the police. He caught me sending the text and asked me who I was texting. I told him it was my boyfriend, and his face became something that I will never forget. His eyes blazed, and he was still as a stone. He calmly told me to throw my cell phone across the floor, specifically telling me to try and throw it to the drive-thru. I had to really toss it, about 9 feet away. Afterwards, he began to scream, making his way again down the counter. He asked me how I could have a boyfriend, when he had been watching me at work for the last 2 months as often as possible, and had never seen a man drop me off or pick me up at work. He pointed to the side of the building that I parked on, and said he knew I parked my blue Toyota there earlier, and not to lie to him. I asked him to leave, beginning to cry. He began to describe my work shifts to a T. When I came in, when I left, how I smoked across the street on break. He told me that he knew that I only drank the Diet Coke that we sold, and that I always cranked up my music when I started my car. At that point, he pulled a small gun out of the gym shorts and waved it around as he said I was stupid to lie to him and that he knew it all. He was going between enraged and laughing, as if he couldn't believe that I didn't want to talk to him or that it was funny that I was scared. I offered him all the money in the register, and he just laughed again, like hysterically, and then again went still. He said, and I'll never forget this moment, "I'm not here for any money, Marina. I'm not here for a job. I think you know what I'm here for." I'm sobbing now, and it made him either frustrated or sympathetic, and he began to say how I just needed to calm down, and that he was just really excited to meet me. He still had one hand down near his dick, and began to fondle himself, holding the gun with the other hand, and about 3 feet away from the opening in the bar. I asked him again to just leave, and when he didn't move, I asked him what I did to him and why this was happening. He began to speak, saying that I was very pretty. He was continuing to talk when all of a sudden, my friend walked in the door with his friends in tow. There were 5 guys all together, and all in a metal band together, so they were a pretty distinct group of guys. The man had put his gun in his hoodie pocket so quickly that only 2 of my friends noticed it. He ran for the door, pushing past my friends, and disappeared into the night. I threw up as soon as he was gone, and 2 of my friends ran out after him, but didn't gain on him enough and didn't see where he went to. I quit my job the next day and called the police. There was never any follow-up, and I still wonder what the fuck did or didn't happen to me that night.
Halloween is my favorite holiday. Is, not was. Despite the events that unfolded one crisp Hallows Eve when I was about 16. At the time, I lived with my parents, younger brother, older stepbrother, and cousin in a big but old house that sat in a cul-de-sac close to Main Street. Behind it ran an alleyway flanked by apartments, and it had a huge yard that my basement bedroom looked out on. We lived in a small town. Crime seemed minimal in that area, and I'd made my way out that Halloween night to make the most of the best day of the year. It wasn't just what happened that night, though. It was, of course, what came after, and one small incident that came before. A few days before Halloween, my stepbrother and cousins arrived home to discover a pickup truck full of dudes taking photos of our house. Weird, but when we approached the men, they seemed friendly and complimented our Halloween setup. It was pretty great, that is true. The men sped off without incident and were quickly forgotten. My stepbrother and cousin re-entered the story Halloween night, the big event itself, at about 3 a.m. Both had been out drinking with their friends, and as such, both had left their respective vehicles and braved the icy walk home on their own. My cousin arrived home first, but he couldn't seem to get his key in the lock, so just sat on the porch bench and waited for my stepbrother to show up. He did about a half hour later. After having a bit of a laugh at my cousin for being an uncoordinated goober, he went to unlock the door himself, and no luck. So they bit the bullet and called my mom, waking her up to let them in. She was of course unimpressed to be opening the door for a pair of drunk idiots at this time of night, and didn't buy their story about the wonky lock. They insisted though, and to shut them up she finally relented and tried her key. She too could not get her key in the lock. Annoyed, tired, and now just confused, she wrote it off as a problem for tomorrow, and the 3 of them hit their respective hay. One other person arrived home that night. Me. Though I arrived much earlier than those 2, and was in bed by about midnight, I woke up close to 1 a.m. Still tired, all I could feel was anxiety, and I didn't know why. At first I tried to tell myself that I'd just gotten a bit too into the holiday spirit and had psyched myself out. But then I noticed a shadow. It was perfectly man-shaped and cast upon my window. I turned on my bedside lamp, blinked, and it was gone. It wasn't unusual, mind you, to see the shadows of people harmlessly walking through the alleyway, and I told myself that's all there was to it. Then there was what happened after. I came home from school the next day. My parents were there. So was a locksmith, and so were the police. My parents were there because, well, that's where they lived. The locksmith was there because my mother had called him as the confusion over the broken lock persisted. The cops were there because the locksmith and my parents had called them when the locksmith proceeded to pull out the tip of a knife out of our lock. I was relieved to see that's where the knife tip had ended up, though, as they discovered 2 of our window screens had been slashed, one on our garage and one on my bedroom window.
Alrighty, for those of you who might recognize my last story, you know that I no longer have my dog. She's with a family friend on 6 acres and is super happy. I've moved to a place closer to the city to be with my family. Some necessary info. I live in a 2-story townhouse that also has a basement with a garage. To get into my basement, you have to go through the 2 storm doors of my garage. My in-laws are currently living in my basement, which is a single room with steps that lead to the main floor. My main floor is my kitchen, laundry room, half bathroom, and the living room. And then I have 2 bedrooms and a full bathroom upstairs. When coming up the stairs, my 2-year-old son's is the first bedroom. My 10-month-old daughter still sleeps in a crib in my bedroom. Now, my house is full with pretty unique decor. I also have a big screen TV, a PS4, and an Xbox 360. My in-laws also have a 360 and an even bigger flat screen. About 3 or 4 months after we moved in here, I was in my son's room with him when I noticed one of our neighbors leaving my garage door area. I didn't see if she actually came out of it or not, but she was near it and walking away with a trash bag. I figured that she'd just gotten confused because she looked older and all of the houses look the exact same in the back and have no numbers back there. So I just shrugged it off. A few weeks later, I had just gotten my daughter to sleep. I was sleeping for maybe an hour when I slowly woke up, and it registered that I had heard a door creak. I looked up to see a man in my doorway, just staring at me. I jumped up screaming and ran to my daughter, while my husband jumped up, woken by my screams. He took a split second to register what was happening, and then charged at the guy. The guy, who appeared to be Milano and was dressed in black clothes and a checkered hoodie, quickly ran out. As he ran down the stairs, he said, "Sorry, I didn't know you were home." Here's the part that really gets us. He unlocked the front door to get out, which is on my first floor, meaning he had to have come through our basement, where my father-in-law was asleep. He broke through 2 locked doors quietly enough to slip past a sleeping man. We figured it couldn't possibly be a case of mistaken housing, because he had to walk past all of our fairly unique stuff to get to our room. What freaks me out the most is that he walked past my son's room first. I can't even bear to think what would have happened if he went to his room instead of walking past. We called the cops, but the guy was never found. We think he might have gone inside another house in the neighborhood to hide, because the police did rounds and couldn't find him. A week or so later, a cop came by and held up a picture, asking if it was him. I said maybe, because it had been dark in our room, and my husband was the only one who got a good look at his face. The cop informed me that he was wanted for aggravated assault, assault with a deadly weapon, and sexual assault.
When I was around 12 years old, I spent the afternoon at a friend's house who I knew from school. He lived in a neighborhood that I wasn't all that familiar with, so when we decided to take our bikes out for a ride, I simply followed him until we came to a large wooded area. It was in a valley that descended away from the roadside, and from what I could see became rather dense and overgrown quite quickly. Because of all the foliage, we decided to leave our bikes and go down on foot. We had been hiking for about 20 minutes when we realized that we could no longer see the spot that we had left our bikes and were surrounded on all sides by thick vegetation. Being boys, we thought this was absolutely fantastic and decided to carry on further into the valley. At some point we came across what looked like an abandoned campsite. There were some old cans lying around that looked like they had been used to boil water, an old ashy fire pit, and quite a lot of plastic sheeting. We had a look around but didn't really find anything interesting, so decided to carry on with our hike. Just as we were leaving, somebody called out to us from somewhere on the other side of the camp. A homeless man appeared, no doubt the camp dweller, and demanded to know what we were doing with his things. We explained that we didn't take anything and were just looking around, and he calmed down. We made a polite conversation for a few minutes, exchanged names, and gave a vague idea of where we had come from. At this point, we didn't feel like we were in any danger, and the homeless guy was actually quite friendly. We decided to get going, though, and said our goodbyes, but he told us that we had to give him something before we went. We hadn't brought any food or water with us, and so didn't have anything to offer him, and he apparently took exception to this. He started yelling at us and demanded our shoes, which neither of us were willing to part with. We started to back away from him, and at the same time try and figure out which way we had come from when all of a sudden he pulled a knife out and started running towards us. I don't remember exactly which way we went or how far we had run, as I was terrified and full of adrenaline. I looked back a few times and realized that we were getting away from him, but he was still chasing us even though there was no cover from the trees at this point. We reached the side of the road where we had left our bikes and fortunately had enough of a lead on him so that we could hop on and pedal for all we were worth. A couple of builders who were offloading materials up the road saw that we were panicked and stopped us to find out what was going on. We gave them a brief version of events, and they went back to see if he was still around, but apparently he was gone when they got there. My friend told his folks what happened that day, but I never heard anything more about it. As far as I know, he could still be living at his campsite, but I certainly wasn't going to go back and check.
Little bit of a background. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I just moved to a small town from a big city with my dad. We moved into our house in early October 2015, and we were having problems with the leaky shower in the bathroom adjacent to mine, so my dad called a plumber to come take a look. The plumber arrived around 8 a.m. the following day while I was getting ready for work in my bathroom. My dad let him in, so I hadn't gotten a good look at him. My dad then apparently goes down the street to gas up his car and then go to work, leaving the plumber to do his damn job in the bathroom. Now, my bathroom is just a toilet and vanity, with a door leading into a shared shower room that has another door leading into my dad's bathroom. So, while I was getting ready, there was only a door between the plumber and I. I guess he figured out that there was a lady in the house due to my hairdryer. Next thing I know, My bedroom door is opening and closing, and there is a very tall, very wide, very terrifying man with more legs than teeth locking my door from the inside behind him. He then walks 5 feet towards me and stops in front of my bathroom door. I freeze. He stands there staring at me for the longest 30 seconds of my life. He hits me with the widest, untoothiest grin and literally looks me up and down multiple times. I hear the front door open and close, not knowing then that my dad had forgotten his wallet, and the plumber pivots on one foot in a twirly motion and unlocks my door and walks out. My dad runs in my room asking if that guy had really just been there and goes to run after him, but the guy walked right to his truck and left without fixing our shower. So, my dad immediately calls the company we hire the plumber from and asks them to send someone else but not that guy, and he tries to explain what happened to the manager. The manager proceeds to tell my dad that it was our fault that the man locked himself in my room with me because I didn't lock him out of my room in the first place. Sorry, didn't know when I needed to lock myself away in order not to be creeped on by a supposed professional. Just terrifying to think of what would have happened if my dad didn't forget his wallet.
Spring 2014 is a slow season for my father's business. The weather is nice and the roads are clear, which means slow shifts at an auto shop. It was mid-April, around 4 p.m. The wind was pulling in a nice spring breeze when my dad, Bill, was walking along the side of his shop. It happened to overlook a small stream and running trail, which he enjoyed gazing at near the end of his shift. The side of his building ran along the top of a steep hill, which turned into the path. He heard a ruffling in the wind, and about halfway down the hill, he sees a big blue tarp. Being very proud of his business and its appearance, he started to climb down the hill. He was just about to grab for it, about 15 feet away, to toss it in the dump, when he saw a car pull into the lot. He turned around and went to help his customer. When 5:30 p.m. rolls around, he closes up and goes home, forgetting about the tarp. The next afternoon, Bill is sitting in his office when 3 policemen came in. They asked my father and co-workers a bunch of questions about any suspicious behavior they may have seen. Now, on a side note, my dad is extremely charismatic and friendly. He oftentimes talks people into sharing information with him that they really shouldn't. He looks like someone you can trust, and you can, and he seemed to always have the insider details about things like this. He used his humor to make people feel comfortable, which helped getting strangers to open up to him. So Bill and his coworker Hank are talking with a female police officer when she lets it slip that a body had been discovered just down the hill. "Oh shit, I was down there yesterday cleaning. I didn't see any body though," Bill said. "Around what time? Did you happen to see a large blue and white tarp while you were cleaning the area?" she asked intensely. Actually, yeah. I almost grabbed it yesterday, but I ended up getting distracted." She asked him more questions about what time, what he saw, etc., when he asked her if the body was found in the tarp. Yes it was. A woman jogging found it this morning around 10:30 a.m. My dad was floored. He was just there yesterday. After a few more questions, the police all head to the crime scene to finish the initial investigation. No one was allowed on the scene,